Hello, and welcome to March's webinar from right to left. Today we have Randy Silver with us, and we're going to be talking about communities of practice. So first of all, probably worth giving a quick intro to Randy. I've known Randy quite a while now. Not only is he a co-host of the Mind the Product podcast, which if you don't listen to, you should go and like and subscribe now. Well, after this. But he's also a consultant and coach, and we've given some lectures together as well. So I'll let Randy give a little intro of himself, but a proper, well-rounded product leader, able to, with great experience at enterprise and smaller business level. And what have I missed out, Randy?
That's a pretty good overview. Yeah, let's go with that. And yeah, do you want to talk about right to left, and then we'll jump into the topic?
Yeah, very quickly. I don't want to bore the audience, but we do these things at right to left. We try and bring everybody together and create this content. We'll create the recording from this and put it on YouTube. And our aim is really simple. Our mission is to help create more outcome-led product teams in the world. And all of these activities we do is to help achieve that. If you want more help, either training or coaching from myself and the team, then get in touch. You can find out all our details on righttoleft.io. So let's just jump into today. Today, we're here to talk about the communities of interest, specifically with a bias towards product management, of course. I guess we should kick off, Randy, with why would you want one of these things?
Why wouldn't you want one of these things? No, I think there's four really good reasons. I mean, a community of practice is a nice thing to have, but really it needs to actually solve a problem for you. And I think there's four main areas that this can really help with companies. And I think they're four really critical things. I think it can really help with retention of the people that you have and their development as two things. It can help with recruitment of new people by making it an attractive place that people want to work, a place where people will learn and again develop their career. And finally, I think it really helps with one of the biggest problems that we have as product leaders, which is everyone else telling us that we're too slow as a team, that the time to realization of value is too long. And a healthy, vibrant product community, it doesn't sound like a thing that would solve any of those problems. And in fairness, it won't solve any of those problems by itself. But I think it's a critical component in changing the culture and getting things going. And in conjunction with a few other basic things, this is the secret sauce that will make your initiative succeed.
Cool, I like that. So it's a secret sauce that's going to, when done well, support with retention, support with development of staff, support with recruitment, and time to value. That sounds
Yeah.
almost too good to be true. If I'm a product leader, what does that mean for me? What have I got to? How do I? What's going to be in it for me?
Well, you really, as a product leader, you're only as good as the worst person on your team, is what people say a lot. And if the people on your team are not developing, if they're not showing things off, if they're not working with your customers and with your peers, with their stakeholders to best effect, then it's just a poor reflection on you. And that can be anything from, are they developing? Are they getting better at their job? Are they engaging? Do they know the strategy really well? To the metric that we talked about earlier, are they getting stuff out the door and realizing value faster? And if they're doing all those things, it's just a great reflection on you. You'll have happier people working more effectively and getting better at their job. And I mean, that sounds pretty ideal to me.
Yeah, definitely sounds good to me too. And when we talk a lot, and a lot of people I work with when I coach talk about how do I cultivate a great product culture? How do I get that culture right? And obviously, culture is it's a complicated thing. It's a mixture of what you do and how people behave. It's the accumulation of all those things. And I think the concept of communities of interest play a crucial part in being able to influence that, but through action. So maybe we can just talk for a second. on what would good look like? What if I got one of these things? If I got a great community of practice in place, what would I see? What would it look like? What's that feel like to me?
I think you just have really what you'd mostly see is vibrant communication between people. When people feel stuck, when they've got problems, when they don't know how to get better at stuff, you'll see other people jumping in, or you'll see people knowing who to turn to so that it doesn't come up in the first instance. I had a boss years ago who every month asked us to contribute 2 or 3 slides to a deck, and it's a big team. We probably had about 90 slides in this deck, and it felt useless. And I just contributed every month, and as did my peers. And after a while, I asked my boss, are you getting value from this? And she came back and said, do you hear me asking you for updates all the time? Do you hear my peers coming to you with questions about how things are going and what's going on and for clarification on strategy? And I told her no. And she said, yeah, that's because I have this deck available that either I can refer to or I can share with others. And while it was invisible to me, the value, it was visible to a lot of other people. And I think it's the same thing with the community practice. It's not something that comes out really visibly and says, um, here, this is the value you're realizing. It's the absence of problems. And you're not spending time on some of the remedial things, the training, the development, the repeating yourself a lot, that makes a massive difference. And so it's not the most flashy thing. It is the thing that just makes everything else better.
I love that. It's a multiplier effect.
Yeah, that's a good way of putting it. I like that.
So let's just chat about retention. You mentioned four things it impacts. If we think about retention, which is often a big challenge, especially in orgs that are in transformation and trying to become more outcome led. What can be expected? What might I expect if I get this right? I can expect the impact to be.
Yeah, people leave organizations for a variety of reasons. Obviously, they'll leave if the pay is terrible. They'll leave if their boss is terrible. They'll leave for a few things if their dream job comes along. And those are things that this won't affect. But a lot more people leave just because they feel like they're not getting any further. They're not developing, they're not engaged. They just get bored. And that's when they respond to the recruiter email, or they respond to the thing on LinkedIn, or they take the call. It's that one thing where they're just not 100% feeling it. And people who are more engaged, who are happier, tend to stick around more. I mean, it makes a nicer culture and it gets everyone else around you excited, which is good as well. So you're using everybody in your team to be that multiplier. But if people feel like they're learning and they're developing and they're getting something out of it, and they can see that, yeah, I could go somewhere else, but if I stick around here another year, I'm going to be much better at my job. And maybe I'll stick around after that. Or maybe I'll leave after a certain point, but I've given a lot more back to the company, and my average time of tenure is longer. And that's really good for you. When you lose somebody, it's painful. I mean, we've all lost people that are not necessarily the best people, and sometimes it's an addition by subtraction. But in general, if you lose even an average person, it's painful just simply because the amount of time it takes to replace them and the amount of time it takes for that person to get caught up and get context and become a valuable contributing member. The damage it does to a team's morale and to a team's ability to deliver value when somebody leaves, it's it's huge. And the metric of success for us really is how quickly are we able to get people knowing what they're doing and making sure that the team is functioning at a high level. You don't want to go through all those stages of forming and norming and storming and to get to performing again. You want a certain amount of continuity.
I mean, that's brilliant. There's probably something I think worth mentioning. Not a popular topic though. We are in a period where companies are unfortunately laying off staff. And it's important to recognise that even in that scenario, retention is still vital. In that scenario, we're more likely to lose people we didn't want to lose. We're more likely to see churn.
Yeah, there's a guy who writes a lot about engineering culture, Gergely, whose name I'm probably horribly mispronouncing, and apologies if that's the case. And he tweeted something out about, as a rule of thumb, after you lay off, 10% of people, you have to expect another 5% or so to quit. And that's awful because those are the people with the most options, the most opportunities. Those are going to be your best people who leave at that point. So you want to do everything you can to make a great culture where they're engaged and they're incentivized to stay.
Fantastic. Let's leave that topic because that's not the most popular. And let's talk about how we get one of these things up and running. Where do I start?
Ah, really any way that you possibly can. I mean, it can be as simple as let's run a book club and get together. It can be let's take a look at a conference talk or something like that. But my favorite way really comes off of a team day, especially if you can get people together. One of the things you're probably going to do on a team day is do a retro and talk about what's going well for us and what are the opportunities to improve. And if you've got that census, if you've got that data about what people want to do more of and where they think there's room for improvement, if you can then start to focus, okay, well, we're going to get together and we're going to try and solve this together, that's a fantastic way to do it. And the bonding and the interaction that people have if you manage to do this in person to kick it off is fantastic because then people want to continue those conversations. So that's an ideal way for to do it. But there's a couple of things you really want to make sure of. You want to make sure this is considered a safe space. There's some things you can do around that. It's got to be something that's incentivized, and it's got to be something that people have time to participate in and permission. You know, back when we were all in offices, doing it at lunch wasn't necessarily a bad thing because you could run out and grab sandwiches and brown bag it and things like that, and you'd be together and doing something different in the office. It's different when you're at home, when everyone's working remotely, because we're in more meetings, we're doing more back to back, and getting lunch isn't always as easy as running down to the canteen or to the shop around the corner. A lot of times you're preparing lunch at home or doing something, and you need that time. So don't intrude on people's lunchtime. Find an hour or so every couple of weeks that is part of the workday, that is normal working hours for people where you're saying, right, we're doing something different. This is important. It's as important as everything else that you're doing because it is working on the culture and working on the problems that we share. So, how are we going to do that together?
I mean, that's brilliant advice. I've seen these things done over lunch, and remote's really difficult. So I think that's really important. It's really easy to forget. And even companies where we're back in the office, some of our staff are still hybrid, and we need to be inclusive and not leave them out. So I think that's fantastic. But when I've seen these things run well, and when I've managed to create a great community of practice in when back when I was CPO at TES, there was always a challenge of who's going to run it, who's makes it
Yeah.
happen. Is it me as the CPO, or is it one of my team? Who do you think's best to make this stuff continue and happen like clockwork?
Ideally, it shouldn't be any one person. I mean, you're probably going to need one person to kick it off, to be fair, but it shouldn't be on one person's shoulders because they will get busy. They will have other things that they have to do. They will have crunch time. And frankly, they're going to burn out on this if they feel the burden on them. Um, so you want to develop it as a bit of a team effort and get a multiple people doing it. You want to rotate the curation around. That's hard. It does take time. You will have to ensure that, just like anything else, it's going to take a little bit of help in shoring it up and making the time and effort to put into it. It's not going to happen magically. Um, I know that Emily Weber and Petra Ville do this, and I do it as well. I think it's something that if you could do it yourself, you should absolutely do so. If you can't, getting some outside help isn't the end of the world, because it takes a good dedicated period of time to create the culture, to create the recurring thing. And it's not about doing it once. Anybody can do a meeting once. It's about showing some results and getting people listening to it, listening to the what comes out of these discussions, and showing that you as a leader and the leadership team are listening, that you're making changes, that you're giving the group permission to make changes and improve things. Um, and if you need a facilitator, sometimes that's, a curator and a facilitator, sometimes that's a really critical thing that you didn't hire for that. And you may not have that natively in your culture. And you may have to build that up and show people what good looks like. And that's not a bad thing.
No, definitely sounds good. Bringing people in to help where there's weaknesses in the teams or where there's just simply not enough resource. We're all too busy. Um, I think listening to that, my experience of this was, getting the right level of fun versus work, if that makes sense. We can't it can't be too formal. It's got to feel casual. It's got to feel enjoyable. I've got to want to be there. Do you have any thoughts on how to make that get the right level of balance there?
Yeah, you can do lots of different things in this, and there's tons of different activities. I love to borrow, excuse me, from liberating structures, which is a wonderful series of activities that you can do, which in general are work oriented, but you have to remember team building and building communities and connections with people is work oriented. There's nothing wrong with that, with doing fun things to generate better interactions with people. We all know that the formal things that are needed in a business, the bureaucracy is absolutely critically needed to run a business well, especially as you get to a certain size. But we also know that the formal is stuffy and takes a long time. And it the people who are most successful are the ones who can navigate the formal, but also have a strong use of the informal, where you can not wait for the next board meeting, where you can just when something doesn't need 10 people to sign off on it, it just needs the right person, that you have that back channel to them, or you already know what they're thinking. And if you have bonded with someone over cooking or music or football or whatever it is, and you already have a connection with them that's outside of the formal reporting lines, it can make it a lot easier. You already have a relationship. So setting all these things up and playing games of some sort, storytelling, introducing each other, finding other topics that are useful. To be honest, the most effective thing I found in person is getting people together for a drink, alcoholic or not, pizza and whatever. If you can give, I mean, it's not a thing to just say everyone has to come in because we bought a few pizza pies, and doing that. It's being respectful of people's time, but actually doing that and providing that space is really useful. And those kinds of bonds are so much more important to spend time and effort on when people are remote and hybrid. We just don't have that kind of relationship the way we used to.
That's great advice. Thanks, Randy. Um, I was trying to think while you were talking there about what else is really important to people listening. And I think blockers might be the next topic. What might get in people's way? And the top biggest one I always see is, of course, budget and permission. So maybe we should start there.
Well, budget's usually pretty easy. You don't need very much for this unless you've got teams that are far flung. But if you're getting people together anyway, just budget a little bit of extra time in there. In terms of space, you probably have room. And if you don't, there's probably a bar or a restaurant or something that has a function room near you that's going fallow. During the afternoon, during the day, these rooms are often available for free, and they're great because it gets you out of the office into a different space. It's a change of headspace as well as physical space, and those can be really great. But just anything you can do for it. Um, to be honest, budget money really isn't a major blocker in this. It's time and it's permission more than anything else. And it comes down to people aren't going to support you on this unless they recognize that employee satisfaction, which is a leading indicator for retention and recruitment, or speed of development, or the development of people, if they recognize that one of these things is a challenge, and I can't think of a single company that doesn't have a challenge in at least one of these. But if you can couch it in terms of this is going to help solve one of our key problems, rather than it's just a nice thing to do. That's the really critical thing. Find out what is it on your boss or other members of your senior leadership team's roadmap. I'm sorry, not roadmap, scorecard in terms of problems that they want to solve, and tie it to that. Don't just do it because it's a nice thing to do.
That makes total sense. Find, like with all things when trying to influence, find the win-win, find how it's going to support everyone else and support your team as well. Fantastic. So I think, is there anything we've missed, Randy? Anything you think of that, oh, we should have talked about this?
Yeah, just one thing I want to bring up as something a friend of mine, Neil Vast, talked about in terms of people's development. You hire people for the skills they have today. Those skills are not the things that you're going to need from them in a couple of years. Things change in the world, and people need to keep developing. And the best way for you to create a culture where people develop is where they learn from each other. And when you do send people out on whether it's coaching or training courses or anything else, when they can bring that skill and that knowledge back and they can share it and multiply it across the rest of the company, that's a really great thing. But you've got to give them a space to do it in. And creating a culture where people do that rather than one-off events is a major, major thing. So creating a learning company is something that I've heard people talk about before. It's not something that happens by accident. It's intentional. And these things are iterative. When we started the podcast, it was something that, we had a certain number of listeners. And month after month and year after year, it continues to grow, and it's become a huge success because we kept doing it. And sometimes you have to remember just showing up and keep doing it and listening to people about what they want, being respectful of their time and creating a space where they get value out of things, but doing it consistently is a major, major win. It's hard, but and any one event may not feel great. Sometimes you have a dud. That's okay. Just keep going, and you'll get more people involved. You'll find out what works and doesn't work, and we're people who believe in agile, which means we examine what's working and not working, and we make changes. We figure out what are the problems that our team has, and we'll change the way we run the community as it grows and make it adapt to the needs that we have.
I love that last part there, Randy. I mean, when I think about all communities that have been formed and then organically grown, and they're always curated somehow by somebody, there's that curation point. They always seem to be the ones that seem most successful are the ones that actually listen to the audience, listen to the community, and introduce new initiatives or change how things operate to fit both the needs of the community, but also the preferences of the community, whether that be, alcoholic drinks or non-alcoholic drinks, whether that be in a pub or finding it somewhere else. It's got to fit for the style and culture and type of business. So I think that listening piece is so vital, along with, is it, are we talking about books? If we've gone to somebody's gone to an event and they're coming back and sharing, is that the culture? Is that continuous share and learn feeling? I think that's vital. And coming up with listening to the audience, listening to the community, come up with new ways to have the same kind of conversations, but new ways to learn between each other. I know you run, I've sprung this on you, sorry, Randy, we didn't talk about this before. I know you run an event for a regular event as a community for your own, for people in your network. I've been through it a couple of times. I can't remember exactly what it's called.
Product in the Ether. You can find it at pita.social, pita.social.
That's the one. And I just share for a second how that runs, because that's quite a nice framework for somebody who's starting this with a fully remote team, for example. It's quite a nice kickoff point. If I turn up to that, what do I expect?
Sure. So first off, full credit to Emily Weber for the format on this. She's open sourced the in the Ether format, and I'm proud to say that I learned from her on this one. But it's a pretty easy thing, to be honest. And there is a certain amount of work that goes into curation and doing it well, but the event should feel natural and should feel easy for everyone from the start. So we reserve an hour. We welcome people in. We just like with any lean coffee, we let them suggest topics. We do some dot voting and figure out which topics are most popular for people. We try to run an icebreaker. I think icebreakers are really important because you want everyone to ensure that they've got their camera on, that they're engaged, that they've had something to say. People are much more likely to contribute if they said something in early on in the meeting. And then once we've done that, we just run through the topics, and starting with the most popular, we put 8 minutes on the clock. The person who put the sticky note up, who introduces the topic, and then we just give each other advice about it. We talk about it, we ask questions, and the topic can be something that you're curious about, that you just want to learn more about other people's approach. It might be something you've learned that you want to share a little bit about. It might be about a problem that you have that you don't know how to deal with. All of these things are valid. Just put it up, and if people want to talk about it, then they'll vote on it. Um, at the end of the 8 minutes, if people want to keep going and we just do a quick show of hands, then we'll extend it a few minutes. And that's really it. Then we'll move on to the next one. The next one will usually get through usually about 4 topics per meeting. We try and keep it reasonably small, to 20 to 25 people at maximum. Anything beyond that becomes a bit unwieldy and people don't get a chance to talk. But it's fantastic. You can do these inside companies. I've been in companies where these have been really successful, and you can just do them outside with people from a really varied backgrounds.
Fantastic. Thanks for sharing that, Randy. And I encourage everybody to check it out as well, because I know I enjoyed the couple I've been to. We've got a couple of minutes left, and then it'll be time to wrap up. I'll be respectful of everyone's evening. But does anybody have any question at all they'd like to ask me or Randy?
I see something in the
Something
chat.
in the chat. How do you get leadership's buy-in on people need at least 30 minutes a week to learn? And just say people have the option to block their calendars out. PMs just don't have bandwidth for it. And Isabel's a internal community manager. Have I got the question right, Isabel? That sound about good? Feel free
Yeah.
to mute and add anything.
Yeah, finding the time is incredibly hard. So this is one of those things where the culture has to be, and permission has to be given from the top. And it has to be something where, you don't just tell people that it's okay. You have to demonstrate that it's okay. So imposing a company-wide ban on meetings for an hour a week and say, okay, Wednesday afternoons right after lunch, if everyone's in the same time zone, for example, or finding a convenient time and say, this is the time for learning and development. We're going to block out 1 hour, no meetings allowed outside of communities, and you don't have to participate in the community, it can be individual learning activities. You also have to follow that up with, I like to do personal OKRs, and these are slightly less formal than the business OKRs with people on my team. It's asking them, instead of the annual employee review, asking them every quarter, what's one thing you want to learn, one thing you want to get better at, and then bringing up at the one-to-ones. And if you've got that 1 hour every week to do it, then I expect you to tell me something at the one-to-one, that you did something. I don't care what it is. You watched a video, you read 10 pages in the book, you did something that gets you a little bit towards your goal and has helped you learn.
Fantastic. Thanks ever so much for that, Randy. I'm just checking the chat to see if there's any more questions. I don't think there is.
I think there's one from Tom about PMs, product managers are often the busiest of all. How do you get them to give themselves permission?
Great
Again,
response.
I think it's modeling behavior, Tom, in a big way. So if in your team meetings you talk about what you've learned and how you've spent the time, and again you do it with those personal OKRs and things like that, and you ensure that that hour is being used, that there's permission for it, and then you model it. And I don't think you can't force everyone to do it, but you can show them that there's a culture of it, that there's the ability to do it, and wish them luck.
Right, I'm looking at the clock. It's 6 o'clock. So I will close up today's session bang on the dot. Thank you very much, Randy. Really
Thank you,
appreciate
Dave.
it. Thank you, everybody, for turning up. Or also just be me and Randy chatting together, which I'd enjoy. But I prefer to do it over a beer. And hope we'll be back next month with a new topic. And Randy, I look forward to catching up with you properly next time.
Sounds great. Thanks everybody for coming.
Thanks. Bye, everyone.